Tired of the same old at business events? Well, this is not the same as last year. The podcast where we blow up the boring and lead the charge into the attendee-first era of business events. I'm Clare, Forestier, a business event MC obsessed with transforming audiences from passive observers into dynamic participants at events. Each week we'll challenge the conventions, share actionable tips, and hear from fellow event rebels who are mastering the engagement game. Imagine your attendees begging for more after your next event. That's the magic of prioritising their experience. Ready to ditch the dull and create corporate events your audiences will rave about? Then you've found your tribe. Join the movement. Welcome to Not the Same as Last Year. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Not the Same as Last Year. Now, if you're anything like me, you are a fan of the actress Meryl Streep, and you'll probably remember her famous role in The Devil Wears Prada when she played Miranda Priestley, the very famous and very snooty fashion editor who had fabulously mean one-liners. And the one that I always think of on this subject that we're going to be talking about today is when she was discussing the upcoming spring edition of the fashion Bible that she edited, and her team were being asked to give ideas, and somebody suggested floral patterns, and she answers something along the lines of florals for spring, groundbreaking, in a sort of terribly sarcastic way. And imagine if it was a movie about a legendary event planner instead of a fashion editor. You could easily imagine them giving that same response to a suggestion that they add panels to the agenda of their event, because let's face it, the event panel is a firm fixture on pretty much every B2B event agenda out there. I don't think I've ever hosted an event that didn't have a panel on it. My God, are they most of the time very samey and very tired and being done so badly? So today I'm asking, is it time to retire the event panel and send it on its way to the maximum security Twilight event retirement home in the sky? So to answer that, let's have a look at the event panel as most of us know it. It's around 40 to 60 minutes. There's a moderator, anywhere from 3 to 8 panelists. Everybody comes on, and it can take 5 minutes just to do the intros, maybe 10 sometimes. Then the moderator goes down the line, asks them all the same questions, and then they all bang on till about 5 minutes before the end of the session when the moderator says, "Oh, hello, any questions from the audience?" And then maybe they get one or two. And then there's an effusive thank you with how fabulous and fascinating, and thank you for so much different perspectives and whatever. And then they go off, and then the next lot of panelists clamber onto the stage. So far, so blah, right? And I know that this conversation is probably freaking out a few event organisers, because you don't want to hear the words "the panel is dead." I mean, we get it. You guys love a panel. Why? Because a panel gives you a lot. It gives sponsors something to pay for sitting on a panel, right? A panel breaks up lots of sessions of speeches, and it makes the agenda look quite busy and lively. It can be a really easy way to add some diverse views and faces into your agenda. It is a really tried and tested way to ensure that a new issue that maybe you don't know much about, but attendees need to have in the agenda, is included. And you don't have to do any of the work really on the content, because if you get all the experts together, they'll come up with the content done and dusted. And of course, most people are willing to be on event panels for free, so you don't have to pay, because everybody loves to be thought of as important enough to be able to say, "Oh yes, I've been asked to be a panelist at this event." You know, it gives them some gravitas. It gives them a sort of a sense that their platform is really valuable. So all good, right? You know, for the event planner. What about the attendee? What is good about a panel for the attendee? Because obviously that's what I'm all about, making events more attendee-centric. And that inherently is what is wrong with panels for me. Yes, they're old and tired, but it's more that they're not being done with the right intention. And that's what I want today to be about: how to make panels something that attendees will love, how to make your panel attendee first, attendee-centric. So actually, I'm not saying the panel is dead. Panic over, but I'm saying it really needs a reinvention, and it should only be a panel session on your agenda if it is in the best interests of your attendee. Once you do that, once you make sure that that's the case, then your panel can be sexy again and you can keep it in your agenda, I promise. So how do we do that? How do we make panels sexy again? Well, my top points when it comes to this are: 1, make sure that if you're having a panel, it is because it is the session that will give your attendee the most value and that it has earned its right to be in your agenda for that reason. It's also that you've picked the right moderator. And if you can't get the perfect moderator, that you have trained them to be the right moderator. You're also doing some education and training of your panelists about what is expected on this panel. And that you are including the attendee viewpoint from the very beginning of the panel all the way through. So if that's all I was going to say, that's a pretty short podcast and misses out all the subtleties. No, lots more for you. So let's start with that first point I made about the session itself. I cannot tell you how often when I see an agenda and then I ask the planner, why is this in the agenda? What's the point of it? What do we want to get from it? What are the goals, etc.? I get a blank look and they get sort of say, well, it's because, we needed a session on that and we thought it'd be a nice way of giving our sponsor a role, and also panelist day, there wasn't room to put them in a keynote on their own, or it's an issue that people already care about now, blah, blah, blah. Basically translated, we don't actually have a clue why, but it's in there. And actually, if the title of the panel session is still to be confirmed when I first see the agenda draft, that's often very telling. Or if the title of it is something like the future of whatever the subject is, or latest trends in subject, etc., or something like that, then you can kind of pretty much guess that the relevance to the attendee has not been considered that much. So that's point number 1. Why is it in your agenda and why is it a panel? And does both the subject and the style of the session focus on what the attendee wants? That needs to be done. Next point, you've done all that. You've decided, yes, it should be a panel session. It's going to be relevant. This is the best way to do this topic and we've got a justifiable reason for it. Fine. Now it comes to picking the moderator. Now, when you are picking your moderators for sessions at your events, what are your normal motivations? Is it because the person you've chosen to be moderator is the best of the panelists that you have lined up, or they're the one who answers the emails quickest and is more organised, so bam, tick, you're giving them the panel moderator job? Is it because they're a subject matter expert? Is it because they are a sponsor who is paid to be the panel host? Now, if it is any of the above, then you are potentially not choosing them for the right reasons, because the moderator's job is to manage the process of the session, the conversation, the connection between the panelists and the audience. Okay, so their agenda literally should be the audience interest, encouraging the audience participation and enjoyment. The subject matter expert or the sponsor will have their own agenda, their profile, their issue, their business, whatever it is. Now, you may have gone for the SME, the subject matter expert, or the sponsor to moderate your panel because you're assuming, well, they are the experts. They know the right questions to ask. It's easy. We just give it to them and they'll sort it. But as we've just established, they've got their own agenda and their questions and their summarizing and everything else are going to be naturally influenced by that. And actually, groundbreaking, as Meryl Streep would say, the moderator doesn't have to be an expert on the subject, because a great moderator can research any topic. And most moderation isn't about the content. That's what the other panelists are there for. They're going to give the content. But you can't always afford independent moderators, and you may have had to put a sponsor on or a specific subject matter expert. But what you can do is you can train this person. You can help them learn that it's about prioritizing the audience, and you can convince them that it's actually in their best interest to do so, because it will make the panel so much better, so much more enjoyable. And that's what people will remember and go away and love everyone who was on the panel, because it will have been so valuable to them. Of course, you don't have to call it training, because if they're a very eminent person or an important sponsor, they're not going to think they necessarily need training. But I think it was episode 8 when we discussed about getting your event contributors to become attendee first. There's ways of getting them on board. You invite them to a meeting, say, listen, we want to make this something really different, this event. We want to make it where attendees get super involved in everything, and we really want you to be part of it. Please help us do that. Set that boundary. Moderators have to come to a pre-event meeting, or have to come to some meetings with us beforehand, so you can then get that kind of information across. Anyway, so part of the training is introductions. Now, it might seem a small thing, but it's actually really important. Now, some people think we should sack introductions on panels altogether. The guru of panels, actually, Kristen Arnold, she's actually written a book on it. It's great. She says we shouldn't bother with them because all the information about who's going to be talking should be on the event app or in the brochure or somewhere in all the event bump, and people can find out who it is and know who it is. They've probably already made the decision to come to the session based on who's in the panel. But I would say, I think you still do need introductions because lots of people, myself included, don't always read all the bump. There's a lot going on. Your lives are busy. You may be going from lots of different events, lots of different things. So it's quite handy to quickly see who's on the panel and understand why they're there and their relevance. And that's actually it. It's quick. So the moderator comes on and does quick introductions, because if you allow people to do their own introductions, that way madness lies. People waffle, and then you are eating into your important session time, and you are limiting the opportunities that you have to engage your audience by doing so. So that needs to be part of a moderator's job, getting that nice and tight, and that will be part of their preparation. Moderators need to prepare questions that are going to be valid for different members of the panel, so that you are not just asking everybody the same question and going down the line saying, and what do you think? And what do you think? And what do you think? That's so boring and very repetitive, and it is not a discussion. And it's not encouraging engagement either. You really want the panelists to be engaging with each other. You want to be controlling the conversation, but you don't want to be running it, if that makes sense. So you want it to be a back and forth between people on the panel and, of course, also the audience. Again, talk about that in a minute. And you want to be asking people for things like, for instances and examples, rather than, letting them give sales pitches. If they start to do that, you want to be, as moderator, strong enough to cut that off. You want to just get that side of things knocked on the head quickly. No sales. Okay, so there's an idea for some of the training for the moderator, and assuming you've got them sorted and understanding what their roles are, get the panelists right, please. Now, this is actually a really big job. Curating a panel needs some art and some intention. It's not just, oh yeah, these 5 people talk about that subject, whop them on the panel. You really want diverse views and perspectives, not a bunch of yes, I echo that view types. Disagreement is a great way to learn, and you shouldn't be afraid of controversy or the unexpected. Surprise is good. It stirs things in us. It's emotional, and you actually want people to feel emotion because it makes the session exciting, thought-provoking and memorable for all the right reasons. And of course, it is very possible to argue calmly and without rancor at business events. We're not all crazy politicians who are all being unpleasant and trying to win votes. We are grown-ups discussing and potentially disagreeing, and that's fine. And also, many members of your audience may disagree with you, and that doesn't mean that your session is wrong. You don't want 100% agreement. Disagreement is how we learn different perspectives and viewpoints. So how many panelists do you want? Well, you need to think a little bit here about your timings. For example, if you've got 4 people on a panel and the moderator, and you've got a 30-minute session, that is going to mean, if you're totally fair with the amount of time everybody has, and you're including the audience, i.e. seeing the audience as another voice, then that's 5 voices to hear from in 30 minutes. And that means that really there's only 6 minutes for each person to talk. So that's not a lot if you want 4 questions or 4 points discussed. So I think for me, the perfect number is 3, plus the moderator and the audience. So 3 panelists, a moderator and the audience. So essentially 5 entities. They all get, over 10 minutes in 45 minutes, because obviously the moderator can be a lot tighter. They should be able to get their questions and their responses and their intros and stuff down to about 5 minutes if they've done the preparation. So therefore 45 minutes for 3 panelists, a moderator and the audience. So now, just as we talked about training your moderator, you need to do preparation with your panelists. You need to get them all in a call beforehand, because winging it is for the birds, not for your amazing panel that your attendees are going to love. So this actually helps everybody as well. It helps the panelists too, because it helps build some chemistry beforehand. It sets expectations. And it also makes people who are a little bit nervous about being on the panel a little bit more confident. They understand it. It's so important as a human being when you're going to do something new or meet a whole load of new people and you're going to be on a stage, that you understand what it's all going to be like and what's expected of you. It just feels a little bit safer. And also you're making friends that way beforehand, which is always lovely to go on stage knowing everybody. It's also good because then the moderator can think, okay, I know who the big talkers are going to be and the ones that I'm going to need to draw out more. I now know all the different perspectives of where they're coming from. I can see the point that they're really going to want to be making. I can be saying to them, okay, how relevant is that to the audience? Is this what audiences care about? Can you make sure that when you give us your answer, you give examples that the audience is going to understand? All those kind of things. You get ideas as well about how you're going to introduce them succinctly. Remember, that's got to be part of what you do, a very tight little introduction. Now, it's really good as well there. You are setting boundaries for the panelists. You are saying, listen, I want you to have tight, good answers that you thought about. I don't want you to rehearse them. I don't want you to have any notes, be conversational. I want you to also ask questions of each other. You can also get ideas from them about questions that you could ask the audience to encourage audience engagement and set boundaries. You can also say things like, please don't waste time with lines that people tend to put out there. Sometimes people on a panel seem to think they're on the breakfast sofa and they have to say, thanks, Claire, for that great question, and then go into none of that. That's not what you do in a normal conversation. This is a conversation on a stage in front of other people that are also going to come in and say stuff. You wouldn't say, great question, Claire, to which you just wouldn't. So don't do it on the panel, and make sure that you kind of politely say that to people. I see it more and more and it makes me cringe. Anyway, my cringing apart, it's now time to talk about what I think is arguably the most important part of the panel, and that is getting the audience to become part of this panel session, because that's what I'm all about, bringing in the attendee as much as possible, putting them at the heart of it. Now, I recently heard that the first 60 seconds of a panel are what it's all about. So you can annoy the audience straight away by doing the same thing, walking on and waffling. If you come on and the moderator says, hi, I'm Clare, I'm the moderator, very quick, this is who I am, super quick, as I said, even about yourself. Now I want to ask you guys a question before I bring on the rest of the panel. You've already sort of fed and coded to the audience that they're part of the panel. And it's super easy to do. And they're suddenly like, oh, okay, this isn't one where I'm just going to sit back and ask questions at the end. I can be involved. And it's then brilliant. You've already got them on your side. And you've also kind of set boundaries that it's not going to be just about the panel boring at you. We want to hear from you. You are the fourth panelist. Now, one of the reasons that panels fail is because there's no preparation. Sometimes, though, it's quite hard. If you've got a subject that is very broad, like AI or diversity, equity and inclusion, you don't always know the knowledge of your entire audience on this. And so one of the great ways to get them involved and make them feel that you care about them is by right at the beginning kind of sort of getting some polling going about what people's level of knowledge is. And I think in many subjects that can be the case, because you can have a very broad group of people in the room. For example, for events people, we're all coming from totally different perspectives, and I might not know about the detail of event production. I have an interest in it because obviously it's something I deal with, but when I go to an event, I'm not an absolute pro on it. So I need it to be delivered at a level I understand. And if somebody tries to find at the beginning where we all sit with some polling, which is super easy to do now, you can ask a few questions and get a really quick answer. That's a great way to start. And also, if you have a very big audience, you might be stuck essentially with polling as the only interaction for them beyond getting hands up and stuff like that, because it might be too difficult in a huge room. But I would try and avoid that if you can try and do any form of getting an audience involved, even on a very small level. For example, when you poll people and it comes back with 15% of the people there don't agree with something that everybody else has agreed with, you might be able to say, hey, is there anyone in the front who we can get a microphone to who is part of that 15%? We really want to hear why, because you might only get that one person's answer, but they are kind of representative of that 15%. And then that 15% will feel a bit validated. You've given them some representation. So I hope you've got from what I've just been saying that there are lots of ways you can get the audience involved and engage them, and that you need to be asking the audience questions, not just saying to the audience, have you got any questions now? So I think this has potentially been quite a long podcast so far, or it's certainly in danger of becoming one of my longest, and I never want to bang on too much. I just want to leave you with one final point, which is if you have an event coming up and you are now thinking, oh my God, I've got too many panels and I can't really justify the existence of them and I'm doing it all wrong, help, I can't change it. You can change a few things. I want you to think there are different ways to make your panels a little bit more diverse and a little bit more interesting. If you know you've got one where there's very diverse opinions on it, you can say, let's set this up more as a debate. You could have 2 lecterns. You could have the moderator sitting there as if it's a kind of presidential debate. And that's not too difficult to set up. Then the next panel, we're going to have 3 people on. We're going to get each of them to speak for, say, 8 minutes each, and then to quiz each other on their points, and obviously still take questions from the audience. So that's slightly breaking it up a little bit. You can also, it's a smaller group thing. We've got our 3 guests who are going to have 3 different points of view or 3 different subjects. They talk about it quickly, and then everybody in the audience picks which one they're going to go to talk to afterwards. And then you have little smaller breakout sessions in that panel, depending how large it is. And of course, there are so many different ways to do this. I hopefully have given you some idea. Do get in touch if you want to discuss more options for what you could do in panels. If you've got your own ideas, share them on social media, tag me in. I'd love to hear about it. And I look forward to seeing you on the next Not the Same as Last Year podcast. And there you have it. I hope you're inspired to revolutionise the attendee experience at your next event. Ready to dive deeper? Download your free guide, 5 ways to elevate your attendee experience without breaking the bank. The link is in the show notes. Subscribe to Not the Same as Last Year podcast, connect with me, Clare Forestier, on LinkedIn, or visit my YouTube channel for even more tips and insights to make your events a hit with your attendees. Don't forget to leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Your feedback is going to fuel my mission. Stay tuned next week for another episode packed with inspiring ideas and practical strategies to put your attendee first.